to United Pan-Africanist Movement. In this video, you will learn more about the UPAM vision, mission, and objectives. You'll also learn about the UPAM integration program, education program, Pan-African schools, and the Pan-African Club, the engineering program, solar panels, batteries manufacturing, and agriculture projects, the W and the News Network, the healthcare system, information and communication technology projects, free trade and e-commerce made in Africa, MIA, and a more team, UPAM Holdings, and our goals as UPAMist. This video is for all those who wish to know more about UPAM, who just joined UPAM, members who wish to know more about UPAM, who wish to become part of the national and global executive, advisory, trustee, and partners.
This movement, also known as UPAM, is a transnational, non-political, non-discriminatory, but a multidisciplinary organization whose objective is to foster the development and unity of Africa, to economically empower all residents of African origin. UPAM aims for a reconciliation of all African states which can allow nations to transform and reach a point of true solidarity, self-government, political and socio-economic independence. Furthermore, UPAM endeavors to promote peace, security, and stability within all African countries, and to advocate for African people around the world. UPAM basic principles accommodate a non-discriminatory policy covered by national and international laws, with its operational structure that embraces a non-partisan and unified ideology and policy for all African countries and people of African descent. UPAM supports the unity of Africa in respect to their religious, ethnic, racial, and cultural diversity. UPAM intends to achieve its goals through the empowerment of all African people in areas that has posed challenges to their existence and development, especially in food security, unemployment, education, healthcare, climate change, environmental protection, and many more. UPAM integration plan is to bring together all traditional communities and religious leaders as well as the people. This will give a common ground where we can start solving our own problems and challenges from the grassroots, and to enable community culture and religion to begin playing a significant role in the reconstruction of Africa. This is to make sure that citizens are not depending on government to determine their future, but to work together to establish educational, industrial development, and training programs based on progressive African cultural values. So, communities, civil society institutions, religion, and traditional leaders have to play their part in order to build a strong and healthier living conditions for the African people. They used to say, "United we strong." Our integration program is to use these basic principles to change the way we operate in our communities so that we can stop all internal conflicts, hate, and division, but to promote peace within the continent of Africa. We are projecting to create about 2,937,900 jobs by 2028 in the following sector: renewable energy, agriculture, telecommunication, banking and finance, real estate, media and communication, e-commerce, and online marketing, and as well as information communication technology.
Did you hear the cries? Did you hear the screams? Did you see children running away from war? Did you see the buildings being reduced to sand or to ashes? Did you see children running around looking for their parents? Did you see mothers looking for their children? That is what life is in Sudan today, especially the capital city of Khartoum. Ladies and gentlemen, dear viewers, friends, and partners, my name is Priscilla Tongwen, and I'm your moderator for today. I want to welcome you all. I want to thank you for taking the time out to spend this hour plus with us. Thank you so much. My co moderator today is none other than my able friend and partner, Mr. Benedicto Mbango. I'll give him a minute to introduce himself.
All right, name here is Benedicto Mbango. I'm happy to be here, and I just want to welcome you all again for our second series, second edition, episode 2, concerning the crisis in Sudan. And we are all, happy to meet you all and be happy to take questions and also some other, contributions from you all. We are all into this together. Like I said before, when one part of Africa is suffering, everybody else is suffering. So if Sudan is struggling today with crisis, it is all us African people around the world are also suffering, because anybody who dies in Sudan or what is going on in Sudan also affect us. So that's why it's very important for us all to come in today and talk about, what is going on in Sudan, and how we can help, and most importantly, how we can prevent this from happening. Again, it is not only in Sudan this is happening, but the crisis in Sudan is very, very intensified at the moment, and we also have crises in other part of Africa, like in Nigeria, in Cameroon, in Congo, and so on and so forth. But we're gonna start somewhere. So starting with Sudan, and then we're gonna move somewhere else. So together we'll find solution, and together we're gonna protect our homeland, and together we're gonna prevent some of these things from happening again. We can identify early signs of crisis like this happening around Africa. So I just want to welcome you all the viewers, and hope you can stay tuned and participate. Share us your idea, what you think. If you have something you want to comment about, please go for it. So we welcome everybody's input, welcome everybody's opinion, and we welcome everybody's in participation. So again, welcome, and we are glad to have you. Thank you.
Thank you, dear friend and co moderator. Last week we had our first series, which was based mainly on Sudan before the crisis. If you watched that, I believe, just like I did, that you felt like you had to visit Sudan because we understood that the people of Sudan are great people. They are welcoming, they are friendly, and it gave me that feeling of wanting to be there. That being said, we know all that is going on in Sudan today. Yes, the cries, the war, people dying left and right. And today, the topic of our series today is what went wrong. What actually went wrong? Where did this all happen? Why did we suddenly lose the smiles, the fun that the people out there were having? Why did it all go away? And we'll find out today that it did not just happen today. It's something that dates back the beginning of the 20th century. It dates back way back then. And so in this discussion today, we have, I'm sorry. In this discussion today, we have our panelists who are going to be talking about what went wrong. And we have Miss Amil Gang, Dr. Shahid Siddiqui, Prof. Njiro Ritome, and Dr. Titus. I will let them introduce themselves, a minute each for you guys to introduce yourselves. Let's start with Dr. Titus. Dr. Titus, can you hear me? Hello, Dr. Titus.
Trying to unmute myself. Yes, sir,
Okay.
I was trying to unmute myself. So, my name is Dr. Titus Ongu. I'm from Nigeria, and I'm the Global Secretary for Women, Youth, and Children Department with the United Pan-Africanist Movement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I would like our other panelists, Miss Amin Gang, to briefly introduce herself.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Amel Ngang. I'm original from, I was born and raised in Sudan, but I'm original from South Sudan. And I'm the interim of the UPAM in USA for now.
Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
You from U.S. representative. All right. Next, we want to have Prof. Itome introduce himself. Hello, Prof.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, my name is Prof. Njoroge Gitome, and I'm based here in Michigan and USA, and I'm the Global Secretary for Education, and I'm happy to participate in this debate.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you all for honoring us with this invitation to be our panelists. Um, just a few housekeeping rules here. So the moderator will be asking the questions. The co-moderator will also ask some questions. We'll give our panelists a few minutes to talk, 3 to 5 minutes to answer their questions. We'll also have room for the viewers to discuss or ask questions. And if for any reason we are not able to get to your question while on live today, we will follow up with you. So if you have a question, you can always put it in the chat. But when it's time, when we open the floor for questions, you can always raise your hands to ask your question. And we just want to ask that if you're not talking, please mute yourself and only unmute when it's your turn to speak. I also want to encourage everyone to put in your names as you would like to be addressed, just so that we're not addressing you wrongly. Okay, at the end of this all, we'll give time for the panelists to give their final remarks. Without wasting much time, we want to dive in right away. We have about an hour 30 minutes at the most for this discussion. So we're going to jump right in. Sudan's economic hardship and political instability didn't happen on its own. This is something that was well planned and is being executed. My first question is going to be directed to Miss Aminga. Miss Amin, are you ready for me? It is no surprise that Sudan has continually suffered armed conflicts. And I have my questions written down, so I'm reading them out. So give me a minute here. So yes, it's no surprised that Sudan has continually suffered armed conflicts, with two civil wars, multiple coups since its independence. The British colonizers at the turn of the 20th century shared colonial control with Egypt over Sudan. They created a divide and rule system where power was scattered amongst numerous tribal leaders and missionaries. These missionaries ran the education system, and this created a whole lot of tension between the northern and the southern parts of Sudan, between Muslims and Christians, and eventually the separation of Sudan into two countries. Ms. Amil, knowing that you're from Sudan, can you tell us a little bit more about this colonial engineered ethnic and religious tensions and how it has created the Sudan of today? Over to you.
Thank you. Um, mm, let's go back actually to the Sudan as one before it divided, and the meaning of Sudan, it means Sud, that it means the land of black. So that means Sudan itself, the land belonged to black, and Arab moved in, and they were being welcomed by black people, which is the original people of Sudan, and they gave them everything like they deserve to take as a human being. But when it comes to term of the government, as John Garang say, actually they want to take over, like the country doesn't belong to like to Arab actually or to Islamic people. The country belong to black people, which is really the suit, and like we're supposed to have freely religions. Like, we should not it should not be controlled under the Islamic religion, and that's what actually brought the conflict, because they want the Sudan to be under Islamic religion, which is really a Dawla Islamia, and not everybody in Sudan, they were Muslim. We have other religions. We have Christianity. We have Muslim. We have non-religions. So everybody was there. And then the Arab people, they want to control the whole Sudan. And then they want to control everybody under Islamic law, which is not like accepted by everybody, because like if you are not Muslim, you can't take Islamic law in your family, and you cannot take the country to be ruled under the Islamic. And that was the main thing caused problem actually between Sudan and South Sudan. That was one of the reasons, beside the racism, beside the other region. But the Islam law was one of the issue, because they want to control the country and they want to dominate everything under Islamic law, and that caused a lot of conflict. And it was really I mean, the war was one of the longest war in Africa. It was over 20 years, and at the end of the day, everybody got what they deserved. They divided the country, and because they don't want, also, if you are not Muslim, you cannot rule the country. If the country have to be ruled only by Muslim when under Islamic law. And if we are the original of the country and we cannot have that freedom, we cannot have our right in that country, it wasn't something like acceptable by the other ethnics or people from South Sudan, even people from Darfur. That's why that now end up another conflict, because Darfur people, they are Muslim, but because they are black, that's why they feel like Hamidi cannot rule the country actually. And that's why even they said in one of the media that black people cannot rule us, but the country belongs to the black people actually. So how they cannot rule? Everybody's supposed to have a chance, and everybody's supposed to rule. And that's what really caused the conflict, is the religion and other discrimination.
All right. Thank you so much, Miss Amil, um, for that explanation. So, would you say those two countries even after the division, they are living happily together?
Sudan people really are very good, and they are like by nature they are very nice. But the politics of the country and the politician are the one who really rule the country. Like we had a lot of neighbors from Sudan. They are Arab people. They are very nice, very nice beyond. It's the nature of all of us from Sudan, but the politics and the politician are the one who ruling everything. But we, as a human being, as a Sudanese, we still love each other and we care for each other. But the politics play a different roles and play a dirty game.
Okay. So do you think this was something that was actually as a fault of the Sudanese people themselves? I know they're fighting for power, but was this originated by themselves, or do you think there was an external influence in this political instability?
Actually, yes, it's a power hunger, but in each forces, there's forces behind them. So whoever have interest beyond, like behind, like Hamedi have their own group, and so Hamedi is the one who from Darfur, and then according to the news, those who like they were talking about Middle East, Egypt, Ethiopia, those countries who really have interests behind Sudan, they are the one who dealing with one group with like they call them now rebel groups, and the other groups they also have like United Nations and UK. They are really behind it. So we don't even know, but there is a forces behind each other, and that's why the conflict is really going to be deeper.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We yes, we know that in fact most of the African countries face a similar problem with those foreign or colonized influencers, as I want to call them. I don't want to point any fingers, but it is obvious that because before we started having all those wars in Africa, we had our own internal problems. But when we started having external influences from the colonizers, it just aggravated and became extremely worse. Back then we were able to handle it, but once colonizers came into the picture, it became really bad. We're going to be coming back to you if there are any more questions, but let's continue with this conversation. I see Dr. Shahid is here. Dr. Shahid, you're welcome. um, I want to give you a minute to introduce yourself before we continue.
Thank you, Priscilla. It was my pleasure to be a part of this discussion. And as we see and we hear that lots of versions, about the Sudan crisis and all, but the right thing that we have to understand about that what the situation is with a very practical approach. So we'll discuss it in the later stage. So I'm here from India. I have been doing lots of things about Africa in the terms of development. Also, as a journalist, we have been watching very closely that what is happening not only in Sudan and how the Sudan crisis is impacting its neighborhood and other geopolitics equations. So we'll discuss about it. So here I will be happy to be here to share all those points. Thank you,
All right.
Priscilla.
All right. Thank you so much. And we appreciate you for coming. All right. Our next question actually was supposed to be to you, Dr. Shahid, but I'll give you a breather since you just joined. I will go straight to Prof. Gitome. This question is going to be for you. As part of the long horn of Africa, Sudan was extremely important in geopolitics. They own lots of mineral resources, oil, gold, and this created a scramble for control and power to own these resources. How has this affected Sudan and brought it to where it is today? Prof, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Priscilla. It's true that the one key major point in Africa and the any place that in Africa we have a crisis, there is going to be something that you see an economic benefit that the fighting groups are having. That's minerals. Mineral wealth is very, very important. To Sudan right now is sitting amongst all the other minerals, is sitting with a rich heritage of or wealth of oil. And of course, you know now today oil is a black gold, as we call it. It is ruling the world. So any country that has oil right now, it is going to bring in international corporations. And I'm not going to look at governments, the foreign governments. I'm going to look at major corporations that are in play there. We have seen northern Nigeria with a lot of chaos being created by Total. In Uganda, there is a lot of that business issues and the pipeline and the refinery with the Total and BP Shell. And so when you go to Sudan, the question we need to ask ourselves is who are the major players in the oil industry? That's the first thing that you want to look at. The next thing is that you have seen a lot of movement about de-dollarization and access to gold. Sudan right now happens to have the third, maybe the third or the fourth, I can't really verify, but it has the third or the fourth largest known gold reserve outside Uganda and the other countries like Ghana and Zimbabwe. So they want to create this chaos. Why? They want to catch up with the gold. China is purchasing a lot of gold right now. I think they are up to 2,035 tons of gold. I think all the other countries, I think Britain has around 8,000 reserve of gold. They are looking for this gold because in case of the dollar collapsing, where do we go? We're gonna go to the minerals. We're gonna go to the gold. And so, just to bring it into perspective, two things come into mind. Port Sudan. Port Sudan controls the. If you have access to Port Sudan, which is on Red Sea, for those who do not have a clear map on the coast of Sudan, that is the only access where all these oil and minerals can pass through if you want to extract them into bulk. So anybody who is controlling Sudan today is going to control the world. We know there's a lot of activity in Eritrea and Djibouti when China is involved. We know that US has also a lot of presence in the Horn of Africa. And so whoever has control there, these two generals are just two proxies, if you ask me, and the civilians are the casualty. These big oil corporations and gold mining companies, these are the ones that are at war. Then the question I have to ask myself is, what is Chad doing sending militias to Sudan? Who is funding it? That's the question. Number two, who is funding the ammunitions that are going to Sudan? We are seeing military. We are seeing jeeps. Jeeps are coming from the United States. We are seeing Hamas on the street. What are they coming from? These MiG fighter jets, they're either coming from China or they're coming from United States. So let's call the shots and then call it as it is. It is United States, China, and Russia in war. But we become the casualties and we become the people that are on the ground. We are refusing to address the real issue. It is economic. They want to control the resources. And because if you control the gold and any other minerals, you control the industrial world. And I will stop at that because I can go on and on. But there are 2-3 countries that appear into my map. I see a lot of entrance from the Chad side under Darfur and all that area. I see Kenya and Ethiopia being involved in the transportation because these tanks, where are they passing from? They're not coming from the air. They're coming in through some of these countries. Why are they pretending? Can we put an embargo on shipping of the ammunition? The NRA in the United States is shipping millions and billions of dollars of the guns and military war equipment and all that. Why are they allowed to just keep quiet here as we see our brothers and sisters dying? Yet they are the ones who are shipping all this ammunition. Sudan doesn't make cars, doesn't make ammunition, does not make tanks, does not make any of those warplanes. Who is manufacturing them and shipping them? And where are they passing through? They're not coming from the air. They're coming through these countries. So I want to pay attention and just focus on or shine the light on those people who are truly making chaos. in Sudan and not the two generals. Just focusing on the two generals will have to lose your point. These two economic powerhouses, China, Russia, and United States, and the corporations behind, these are the ones who are causing chaos in Sudan.
Thank you so much for that detailed and deep explanation right there. So, based on your discussion here, I'm hearing that it is because of the oil, it is because of gold. So Africa is blessed, but we are not even able to enjoy our blessings. I mean, we are willing to share, but it doesn't look like that is the case here, because they're coming from all over to fight us for that.
Let's ask ourselves the first question. In 1455, when Papa, I think Alexander, issued the bull to say that colonize and extract resources for Portuguese and the Spaniards, they were coming to Africa to steal. They call it colonization. First of all, they called it invasion. The next one, it was colonization. Then, it came in as slavery. They were extracting even the people. Then they realized now they have to call it colonization. And now they are calling it capitalism. It's the same animal. They're just stealing our resources, whether it is human capital that they are going to cry. When we cause crisis in Sudan, let's see the first person who is going to run away is educated, is a trained, is a professional who is going to run to Europe or go to America. This is a total reserve of trained doctors, trained accountants who are going to come to these countries as refugees, and they're going to support those economies as a first casualty. The next thing is we're going to go back and reconstruct the infrastructure. They're looking at both the minerals, and when they destroy the infrastructure, we are asking ourselves why they are destroying it, because they have to get the contracts to rebuild, siphon the oil and rebuild for you, and therefore you continue paying in both places.
Then that brings me to the question, what are we doing? I mean, it's not a question that I want you to answer, but it's just a question that I want each and every one of us to think about. What are we doing about this? We need to think seriously about this, because it's not something that just started today. This is something, like you said, it's been going on for a long time, really, really long time. And we are aware of it, but we keep letting it happen. I know you said we shouldn't talk about the two generals, but they are the ones that are being used to do this. And all fingers are being pointed at them. That's why today we wanted to dig deep into this. And now we're discovering that it's not just them, but they're being used. They're letting themselves to be used. Why? That is a question we need as an African to be asking ourselves. So we'll leave that one. Yes.
Let me jump on there and say the calling out the two generals is a sideshow. Is that what they have kept on saying in Cameroon? There are two presidents, or there are two guys who are fighting there. When we go to northern Nigeria, we say, oh, it's the Islamists versus the Christians. Initially, it was the Yoruba versus the Igbos. They try to play you on that one. In the meantime, the true players, if you look at Nigeria, for example, which is the same exactly, the playbook of Nigeria and the playbook of Sudan is the same. They tell us the Islamists and the Christians. That is nonsense. They should tell us they're stealing our oil. That is all they're interested in. And they create this chaos, and then they siphon the oil. Guaranteed, when this war is happening in Khartoum, they're sending planes to extract gold and taking it without any control, because nobody is controlling the country. We have to focus on everything, because if we just focus on the generals, we can even kill them. But what about the BP Shell and the Total that are the biggest player in the oil industry in Africa? What are we doing about them? Why are we not putting oil embargo on them? Why are we having gas stations in Nairobi or in South Africa that are owned by those countries when we know they are the ones who are financing? We are financing the war ourselves. We are financing ourselves by the war by sucking and paying the money to them, and then they go cause the war. Call them out.
All right. This discussion is a very serious one, and I would like to hear from other panelists. But let's go to the next panelist, Dr. Shahid, and get his own. I have a question for Dr. Shahid, so I'll have him answer this question, and then we all the other panelists can come back and give an input on this issue that Prof just raised. So, Dr. Shahid, this is for you. So the struggles in Sudan is tied largely to foreign intervention. The wars, the struggling economy, which was made worse by the 20-year sanction of Sudan by the U.S. for the claims that they were producing chemical weapons for Al Qaeda. This cut off Sudan from most international trade. They lost about 75% of their oil reserves, crippling the economy and throwing Sudan into abject poverty. Dr. Shaid, give us an insight to this foreign intervention and its implications to Sudan's economic situation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor, for this is very important question. First, I have to be agree with the professor what he told. He pointed very correctly that it's not about the Islamist or the Christian fight or something like that. It's beyond that. That is not very much visible. That I can just put you some background that how these efforts of the international community to build peace in Sudan have been very much frustrated by the failure to stop the violence in Darfur, that continuous setback in the implementation of the 2005 peace agreement, if you remember about that agreement, and that is the failure to remain sufficiently engaged with the process at the root of the violence. This applies particularly to a local conflict and the ways in which they interlock with the national and the regional conflicts. So here we see that now foreign actors and outside interest, different reports of the foreign interference in Sudan means that each foreign power is trying to secure its interest in Sudan, and that neighborhood countries that could be used as a launch pad or to influence the conflict based on the alliance of each country and its support for the warring parties. So here are, like, even it is the Gulf country or Turkey, they are also fighting for the dominance in the Horn of Africa in order to control the Red Sea, and their impact may be observed by several domestic issues in some countries of Horn. That coupled with the economic interest or some Gulf states, particularly the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, have been implicated in the in the Sudanese situation since 2018 as a result of their support to some Sudanese military generals and their efforts to shape the country's political events, as some of them see the transition from the al-Bashir's rule as a way to roll back what some saw as Islamist influence and the suitable or stabilize the Middle East and the North Africa. So Sudan could be, Sudan could become more another battleground for the West, which backed the ouster of al-Bashir, and but was tardy to rally around an election transition versus Russia, which worked out a deal with the al-Bashir for Sudan to host a naval base. While the Russia-Sudan naval deal is still under review, Moscow is growing influence in the Sahel and in the present in the Central African Republic and the Libya. And if you go to the implication, if you see the implication, this conflict and the violence have serious and implication not only for Sudan, as they have caused the death of over 400 people and humanitarian disaster, but also for its neighbor like Horn Africa, including South Sudan, Central African Republic, Chad, Libya, all of which are other dealing in various internal crises and instabilities. And if you particularly talked about South Sudan, which borders the Sudan in the north, the recurrences will not only the only be the security related, but also the economic and social. The conflict is also, reminiscent of the war and the crisis that led to the South Sudanese state coming into existence in 2011 following the decades of civil war. This ongoing crisis, if not contained swiftly, has the capacity to escalate into full-blown war and may lead to the further, disintegration in Sudan, especially with regard to the critical situation and the long and renewed conflict in Darfur. So, if you talk about the particularly loss of the oil revenues, which had previously accounted for more than half of the Sudan's revenue and 95% of exports, was the biggest economic shock brought by the South Sudan success in 2011. The recent sources indicate that the South Sudan deliver 1 lakh, 1 lakh, 170,000 barrel of oil per day to its northern neighbor through the pipeline, which may be hindered by the current conflict. So you can see that how this economic loss is going to be. If you talk about the Chad's political destabilization, it is considered one of the countries most affected by the ongoing conflict in Sudan due to the historical and the social and the cultural relationship between the ethnic groups of the both countries. And if you come to the Libya's involvement in the Sudan crisis has been determined, although there is an allegation that the Khalifa Haftar, commander of the Libyan National Army, assisted in the preparing the Sudan RSF for the battle of the months preceding ongoing fighting. So if we analyze all these, neighborhood, it's a big, huge economic loss. Not only economic, cultural, that loss are also there. Historical bondings were there, which is being affected. And if you see the fault lines, the central cause of this tension since 2019 uprising has been the civilian demand of oversight of the military and the integration of RSF into the regular armed forces. But the civilians have also called for the handover to the lucrative military holdings in agriculture, trade, and other industries as a crucial source for the power of an army that has often, outsourced military action in the regional militias. Another point of the that contention is the pursuit of the justice over the allegation of war crimes by the military and its allies in the conflict in Darfur since 2003. The International Criminal Court is seeking trial for Bashir and the other Sudanese suspects. But what are the stakes that now we have to analyze? What are the stakes in the region? Then we can analyze it's a volatile region bordering the Red Sea, Sahel region, and the North Horn of Africa. Its strategic location, agricultural wealth have been attracted regional power plays, complicating the chances of successful transition civilian-led government. So these are all you see that it's not only about the Sudan. What the professor has indicated, it's like beyond that people want this free space to use that resources to disturb this kind of regime. Either it's like RSF or the Sudanese militaries, they can be like the way or channel to get into that and use their own agenda and ambition. And here we can see very clearly, so Saudis or UAE have been, I've seen the Sudan's transition as an opportunity to push back against the Islamist influence in the region. And they, along with the US and Britain from the Quad, which has sponsored mediation in the Sudan, along with the UN and the African Union, Western powers fear that the potential for a Russian base in the Red Sea, which Sudanese military leaders have expressed openness. So these are all the things, it's not about the Sudan or something. Like everywhere you see the same chronology, same kind of trick is happening, and it's like it's not going to end very soon because it's a external power is involved in that. So in nutshell I can say that it's like very, very big economical loss. Also will increase the dependency on the humanitarian aid for the long run, and it's not very good for any country. That those we have seen in the past Afghanistan, that where Afghanistan is, so you can understand very well that how they are struggling. Even they have the money, but they are not able to use it because it's frozen by the US government. So lots of things will come up in the future as well.
Thank you so much for that detailed explanation right there and for the
And
answer.
and if I just jump in to support what Dr. Shahid is talking about, he talked about clearly about the Sahel region. Last year or the last few years, we've had issues with Ethiopia, the United States wanting to control or to get the regime out. If you look at the map of Africa right now, they've managed, and I mean the external factors, which is the Europeans and all these other external players, they have successfully been able to cut Africa into two. The Sahel region, which starts from Mauritania on the west, is in chaos. Mali is in chaos. Niger, which is very rich in uranium, is in chaos. Chad is in chaos. Sudan now, which was the remaining hotspot of Sahel region, is in chaos. Now you can see they try to create chaos in Ethiopia. It never materialized, but I expect now Eritrea and Djibouti for them to complete that that Sahel region instability. They do that specifically to put a firewall between the Europeans and Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. It's clearly the strategy. And the key is to make sure that they are extracting all the resources that are in the northern region, call it Islamic, call it Christianity, call it tribal, call it whatever name you call it, but they are causing all that crisis. One solution that we should look for is that we should remove external players on the table of negotiation. If we're going to bring in these two warring factors together, we need an African Union stabilization team that is going to sit together the generals, remove the Middle Easterners, remove the Chinese, the Russians, and the Americans. And just like Somalia, we are now seeing Ethiopia and Kenya and the IGAD region has stabilized Somalia. We need to get all these other foreign factors out. Back to you, Dr. President.
All right. Thank you, Prof, for that addition there. Um, my follow-up question to Dr. Shahid was, I mean, which you have just made mention to Dr. Shahid, being a journalist and having gone around, you keeping track of all of this, the happenings, especially in Africa, that you see the trend in it. What do you think could have been done differently?
See, I see that at this point of time, that wherever you see that, we look for UN bodies or United States to, solve this issue. It's even you don't look for the solving this issue, they jump in to, give the solution. But this time, options to mitigate the crisis are very limited. Doubtlessly there are lessons to be learned from the policy failures in the past that we have seen. It's not easy, unless the people and the leaders of the country itself they understand the situation and the implication of the long term. It is not going to be solved. Nobody is, because now the options are not left here. And if you see, in the long term, how the despite the antagonist and long history of the disregard of the law of war, the United States should condemn their violation, have to collect evidence in on the later persecution, whatever in the past has been done. And you can see that similar thing, that what is happening not only in Sudan. Just focus how the things are happening, Russia and Ukraine. Even US is not visible in front, but Ukraine is sufferer. Like, the sometime that maybe the Sudan will be, like, Ukraine, that people will play the game there itself as a battleground, but ultimately loser will be the Sudan and Sudanese people. So they have to understand that what is happening here, and they have to find the solution without relying upon the external forces and the external mitigators, or whatever those who are negotiators they call themselves. But they have their own hidden interest and agenda to set there, because now the whole world is saturated. Now Africa is the only area that they can explore and make the new colonization or new dominance. Even the Chinas, you have seen how they have come into the many African region, and Russia will also be on the same path. So here, I, as a journalist, as an observant, that what I feel, that there are no any new rocket science or something magic will come to solve this issue. It has to be solved by their own leaders, own citizens, to understand and save their own Africanism, or that the issue to resolve there, because there will be differences always there will be. And the problem what I have observed in the last 20 years of my career in the as a development analyst and a journalist, I have seen the problem. One major problem is that everybody wants to become a leader. That is the one drawback. Nobody wants to follow and learn for some time to become a leader. So that is one small drawback I feel and observe, that everybody, like you see in a Sudanese crisis, from where it started, everybody wants to control this, but behind that there may be the people, those who are controlling, but at the in front you see that those two military men, they are rigid to control their whole system and everything. So I feel that we have to find a solution in Africa itself, not outside of Africa.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I agree with that. It goes back to what we said at the beginning, where there was this divide and rule practice by the British colonizers. They came in and they divided power to this leaders in the, like we call them in Africa, the villaging, you know, they divided power to them, and so it gave them the edge over every other person. And being a leader, which is supposed to be a good thing, but the way it was done back then, it gave the other people who were not leaders or the non-leaders the feeling of inferiority. And with that feeling of inferiority, now everybody wants to attain to become a leader. And so there's always that fight there. And with the I'll call them foreign invaders, um, the fuel the fuel that desire for people to do that. And so they're coming with financial support, they're coming with bribery, in quotes here though. They're coming with that and kind of instigate our people to fight against each other. And unfortunately, we keep falling for it. And our people are suffering. It's like we only look into ourselves, what we gain. Look at the people out there. Look at the children in the streets in Sudan today. See the destruction. People going around without even food to eat, water to drink. I mean, it's not just in Sudan, but we see that trend. And we need to think deeply as Africans. We need to stand together as Africans. So this takes me to my next question, and it's going to be to Dr. Titus. I know we have a lot of questions that people want to ask based on the conversations we had before, but I just want to get to Dr. Titus. Let's get everybody, every topic covered, and then we can ask more questions. All right. So, Dr. Titus, are you ready for me? Okay.
Yes, please.
I know you're the humanitarian guy. So, the current crisis in Sudan has left thousands dead, homeless, and others severely injured. I know you have direct contact with those in Sudan right now. Can you give us an idea of the situation right now and how we could support, how we can come in with some humanitarian support? I mean, not just us, but anybody who's interested. What kind of humanitarian support do they need? Over to you, Dr. Taylor.
Well, thank you very much. Unmute me.
Go ahead and unmute yourself. Dr. Titus, go ahead and unmute yourself. We cannot hear you. We are not hearing you. Okay, there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes. I said that just as it is the case with every humanitarian crisis across the world, now basically in Sudan, the humanitarian crisis there is terrible. First, there are people that want to or have fled Sudan itself, and they found themselves in South Sudan, in Egypt, in Chad, and so on and so forth. And there are also others that are trying to flee but are unable to. So what they need is transportation either by air or by road to take them out of the place that is heated up. And then that apart from those that have gone outside the country, there are others that have fled to other states in Sudan. And they are in their need of humanitarian assistance, including food items and non-food items. And for children, for example, they need things like milk, just ordinary milk that they will take, because even their mothers have found themselves in internally displaced either camps or they are housed in hospital, in schools, and also in university hostels and so on and so forth. And then there are others that family members have taken in states within Sudan, but those that don't have family members to take them in, They resort to sleeping in open places or in schools or any other place that they find themselves. And then for young girls or young women, they need materials for dignity kits. That is to take care of themselves, things for personal hygiene, and also women. Some women have lost their pregnancies, and then some also need things or items that they could use to preserve their human dignity. And then that apart, even those that are fleeing or those that have found themselves in IDP camps, they need something as simple as water because some are dying of thirst in the process of trying to flee the conflict zone, and then others almost need food items. And in that apart, it is even so difficult to even access cash in Sudan. Even for those that have money, it is difficult for them to access that money. And that apart is also quite challenging for even family members or friends from outside Sudan to send those that are in Sudan either cash or humanitarian, let me say, support. And then also in states where they have found themselves, like I have been in discussion with some humanitarian affairs commissioners in some of those states, and they have been crying for help. And even NGO organizations have also been crying for help because there seems to be, let me say, a challenge even in accessing either services or providing those services. So these are just some of the humanitarian needs that are on ground and the situation on ground based on what I've heard from NGOs on ground and from our people on ground and then from young girls on ground and then from people that we met when we were in Sudan about just barely 2 months ago that we saw and then we spoke with and then we had meetings with, whether in government, in the NGO sector, and then just family friends. So maybe I will stop here and then others may contribute to this also. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Titus. Thank you very much for that input there. It is very heartbreaking to hear that. Um, I mean, there are other parts of Africa that are going through this. Um, I know if it were possible for us to talk about all the other parts of Africa, we would. But it's just we just want to do one take one step at a time, one country at a time, and that's why we're talking about Sudan today. Um,
There is a question here on the chat. I know maybe I think Professor Jeroge had talked about it, but somebody asked that who are those benefiting from the crisis? That's where the solutions um, starts from. So pretty much, it pretty much. I think the question is, I think the solutions start by identifying who are those benefiting from the crisis, and then from there we can figure out where to bring solutions. That's the question that the person is asking. At the same time, it's more of like pointing the right directions on. But I don't know if anybody want to answer that particular question.
okay.
So, so I'll just want to throw some light on that because right now what we are seeing in Sudan is we're seeing the hand of, for example, Chad, which means there's a lot of Russian involvement from that point, and there's a lot of Saudi corporations that are also getting involved. But I think those two are just military or interventionists coming from other companies. Most of the companies, for example, Saudi, what is the reason why they would be wanting to control anything in Sudan? It's not religious. It's because there is a trade oil that is affecting. If any production of oil is going past a certain level and Sudan produces that oil, it affects the economy of Saudi. So you see that, and therefore I see the hand of United States through that particular role. And I also see the liberation struggles that are coming from the Sahel region, the Niger, the Chad, the Burkina Faso, where we are having a lot of intervention done by the Russians, and they are kicking out the French. And I think what we are seeing in Sudan is US saying, "Hey, stop! You cannot keep on kicking out the United States and the Europeans out of the region." So there is that bigger picture. but there are also companies that we need to identify. I cannot really specifically say whether it is Total or BP Shell, but those are the two culprits when it comes to the oil sector. And especially Total has been doing a lot of chaos. They are involved in Uganda, they're involved in Angola, they're involved in Nigeria, northern Nigeria, the chaos that you saw even during the election. And therefore, there is no reason for me to be believing that they are out of it. They also own part of the Aramco in Saudi Arabia. So I see a lot of hand of that and the influence from that point of view. But I cannot pinpoint right now because there are hidden cartels that are merchants and are doing business for them.
And so I think to come back on that as well, I know somebody wanted to say something, I believe.
Yes.
Dr.
I also
Titus.
wanted to add that in addition to what Prof has said, that those countries or those companies that are producing arms and selling to the respective groups, whether it is arms, whether it is bombs, whether it's aircraft and other ammunition, are also the people that are benefiting from this. And then if you trace back, you realize that it is not African countries that are manufacturing these weapons, but those Western countries that Prof has mentioned. And it goes back to the US, it goes back to Russia, and it goes back to China. So we have to be very careful. Thank you.
And if
Thank
you
very much.
look at
And just to this is something the chat that came in during the discussion, well, when we scheduled a meeting on Facebook, and somebody brought up a concern. I wasn't even aware of it, but I just wanted to ask that question right now if the person is listening and other listeners. So they were concerned about United States not having an embassy in Sudan, and then they ended up having an embassy in Sudan about 8 months ago, and a couple of months later on, they told the Sudanese government to not allow the Russia to build a base in Sudan, and that so the Sudan didn't listen, and then they said there will be consequences if there is no if they allow Russian to build a base in by the Red Sea and all that stuff. So but then the Sudan government didn't listen, and then a few months later on this happened. So do you think that this is all linked up, or is it pre-planned stuff, or based on government U.S. warning to Sudan? Did they saw it coming, or is it something that is planned, or is it something that's provoked just to be able to stop that operations, or like what are your take in on all of these kind of concerns that people had prior to this event?
I think it's pre-planned. It is pre-planned. So we're gonna trigger it by doing. If they do this, we're gonna cause the war. That's just a trigger for when they want to start the war. But this is pre-planned. United States lost Ethiopia. They were not able to create the destabilization they wanted to create in Ethiopia as the headquarters for AU, and they wanted to really create that chaos. The IGAD overruled them. They refused to play ball. Now they knew the only place to go is Khartoum, and Khartoum is clearly the fight for resources, and they are not coming in and as I say, Dr. Titus has really pointed out, it's not just the oil companies, it's also the NRA in United States and the gun manufacturing. Those are the heavyweights of selling guns everywhere. We're seeing people dying in United States because of guns. They don't want anything stopped about gun manufacturing. It's a whole industry in Texas and all these other states. These are the major suppliers. General Motors, Jeep is by Chrysler. What is it doing in Sudan? Hammer is by General Motors. What is it doing in a war on the tanks that they're manufacturing? We know they're manufactured in Detroit. Why are they sending them there? We need to call them out. And then if you go further, the construction companies, the road construction companies, the infrastructure, when you see those generals bombing the road, why did they bomb the road? Why did they bomb the airport? It's because somebody told them, fire that so that we can get you. If you become president, give us the contract to do it. They're doing it. They did it in Iraq. They did it in Afghanistan. There was not even oil or anything in Afghanistan. They went that route. So companies are doing it. So it's
All right.
not just one company; it's a mega a group of corrupt companies that are doing that.
And if you
All
look
right.
carefully,
Sounds good.
Saudi is US ally, and then Chad is a Russian ally. So if you look at the
Yes.
two, you connect the puzzle. Chad, US ally, Niger, in Russia ally, Saudi, US ally. If you look at those, you connect the piece of the puzzle. Thank you.
All right,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Back
But
to you, Christina.
no, I said it looks like Dr. Shahid wanted to say something about this. Go ahead, Dr.
Yeah,
Shahid.
yeah, it's really very well pointed by Professor. That what is that's very pre-planned, and it's not about this because when any leadership is losing its own battleground or in their own country, they want to divert the attention towards other side. They have very soon they are going to for election and all, so they have to be some issues and something to be disturbed, and because if and there is a very big failure that we see that due to Russia Ukraine war, US is not happy with the result that what they are seen. So that is also the major setback. They want to divert to other side, so at least they gain something, like the people can also see that yes, US is still a superpower and they can do something. Another see the new geopolitics equation about due to Israel. Whenever you see that wherever have they gone, there are some kind of this kind of turbulences. They are not in the front, but they are always there, to disturb, and because they believe in the business, and business is never a social, because when the businessmen come into any picture, they will just think about the profit at any cost. So just see simple, when the and the society and the social concern will be sidelined. So these are the things coming up. The leadership is coming up with the business mindset. They are they are controlled by the corporates. They are just thinking about their profit and loss. So they don't bother about where the country is going, where the country men are suffering. So these are one thing. So, at the time that when we are into the crisis, when the Dr. Priscilla asked about that, what are the solution and the things we should do in the prioritize. So there also I wanted to add one thing. We can work on the countering the misinformation. That is the biggest threat of any country. That is the biggest weapon. People use it to disturb and destabilize any government. When we start uh, countering the misinformation, disinformation at this point of time, and just counter the fake narratives and other things, half the battle is won. So that is what we are seeing, not only in Africa, in India, in other Asian countries. We see that what the WhatsApp is doing. They are the new generation tool, to fight and to divide any society. So whole system is like suffering with that. So it's Africa is not new. So we have to understand very well, and the youth leaders have to take charge, to take a lead. It will take time, but the new generation who are discussing about this issue, they have to understand and take the lead that yes, you have to work very minutely at the micro level, that each and every threads have to be corrected. Then only we can win this battle. Otherwise the next generation will curse on this leadership, that what we did when we were suffering, when we are having the vision and we knew the issues and everything, why we sit quietly. So nobody will forgive us in the future. So that we have to understand that we are at the very very crucial stage to take this ownership and the accountability to set it right.
All
Let me
right.
just also add briefly that sometimes the West uses economic sanctions as a weapon to bring down a country. And then when they do that at the initial stage, you will not see it coming. Sudan, for example, has been under economic isolation, and then internal conflicts, they were not, that didn't bloom up to the extent. But after a while, it blossomed, and then it has become what it is today. So, who gave or put Sudan under sanctions? It is definitely the US. And we've seen the result or the effect of this sanction. Rather than punish, for example, an African leader that is, let me say, not doing things right, they choose to punish the whole people because they know that if there is tension in the country, if the people are under hardship, they will rise against their government. And then they, the West, will come in and do whatever they want to do. So this is what is happening in Sudan and then in other many African countries where they impose sanction on a country just for the sin of one, two, three leaders. And then Economic hardship comes in the country, and then before you know it, voices rise here and there to protest. And then they come in, they ship in arms and ammunition, support group one, group two, and then while the people in the country are fighting themselves, they go stealing their minerals and their resources, as Prof has said, and also as Dr. Shahid and other members of this group have said. So we have to look at it carefully. But again, even African leaders will have to be careful and also watch, because there is an African proverb that says that if you see your neighbor's beard on fire, you have to go water yours. So what is happening in Sudan today would definitely go to another country. And we have to be very careful and then unite as Africans. The Sudanese people need to unite and then see the Western or the influence from outside. That is when they will have a solution to their problem. Thank you very much.
And Dr. Titus has brought up a very important point that I wanted to bring up, and this is the next point. If you ask me, is South Africa. Look at what they are doing with the energy crisis, because they play different cards. Sudan, they are playing the card of military. In South Africa, they are playing the card of the energy crisis. Look at what is happening in South Africa. They want to bring down the ANC, they want to bring up the EFF, but they don't want the EFF. So you will see them doing exactly what they did with the Zimbabwe. They want to put a trade embargo on South Africa if they host the BRICS nation meeting, I think somewhere in June and August. If Putin visits and South Africa is putting their foot on the ground and saying he's going to visit, but you will see the next crisis out of South Africa. They want to bring down that country. It's the only country that has nuclear capability, and so bringing it down is so much good for them, because then Africans, they're none who can produce nuclear weapons. So let's pay attention to that and also help South Africa as they go through the crisis right now.
I just wanted to go through the chat here. Well, just not anything to in a question, but someone just say hello. Someone say great leaders. Someone say great for United Pan-Africanist movement. Some other person say very enriching discussion, and then somebody say hi. Somebody say great discussion here. Any conflicts in any part of Africa has a negative impact to the masses. Somebody say attending. Another person, a very interesting discussion. Says also important to note that a rich country like Sudan calls for interest so that imperialists can benefit from the resource in the name of humanitarian assistance or humanitarian help. Another person just said two generals has been sponsored by the Western world for resource control in Sudan. Every war in Africa is motivated and sponsored by the Western people. Somebody else say the solution takes a collaboration effort. If there is no understanding or there is a political interest involved, the externals will not make a concerted effort. It takes consistent education and issues uh, palpable despite uh,
Political interest.
it takes so despite the political interest for external to make more efforts. Somebody excellent comments. Love Slay, and so on and so forth. And then great is presence, all facts. So that's all the discussion we have. So back to you, Dr. Priscilla.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you
Prof.
for reading out those comments.
Yeah,
Just have
sorry.
2 minutes.
Yes.
Yes.
Prof. Gitome mentioned something that we should watch in South Africa just about yesterday. I saw a flyer circulated, from South Africa that foreigners should leave. That is how it starts. You would think that it is Africans that are doing that, but it is not. It is other groups from outside pushing some to do it, and then thereby causing destabilization in African states and African countries. So that is how little it starts. Before you know it, it will be those that are in there versus those that are non-citizens, and then even citizens themselves. So that is how it starts. That's already started in South Africa, but we should keep a tab on that. And then if you carefully look at what happened in Sudan prior to this time, there were accusations of the El Bashir government of let me say, apart from the economic isolation, of autocracy. And then of minor conflicts, they were reportedly perpetuated, by al-Bashir himself. But however, it is these two same generals that were allies that came in to put his government aside and to bring, to give to the people of, let me say, Sudan, let me say, the dividend of democracy, or what they actually look for. And then why are they fighting now? It is because of what? Outside influence. It is good for them to actually know who their true enemies are. And it's also good for the people of Sudan and also Africa to know who their true enemies are. We shouldn't fight ourselves. We shouldn't fight each other, because if we do, it is our people that will suffer. The humanitarian burden will be on us, on ourselves. Development will be retarded, and this is not good for Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that input, Dr. Titus. Um, I just wanted to open the floor to questions. Let's use just 5 minutes. I know we are almost at our 1 hour 30-minute mark here. We want to cut off right on time. So we'll just open the floor for questions. Anybody has a question, please? Any questions to our panelists?
I have a question myself.
All right. Go for it.
Yeah, my question is go like this. So we civilian of African, uh, if we cannot trust our leaders, to bring us the peace and the stability that we need in our country, and we cannot trust the UN, like not the UN, yeah, the African Union. So who we should trust? Can we trust ourselves and work together? Can we unite it as African and educate ourselves and work for our Africa to bring the peace and the stability, to educate everybody to know that who are our real enemy, and how can we really choose the right leaders in the right place, because it seems like all our leaders that we always trust and we rely on them, they always been used by our enemy, and they will bring the country from 10 to 0. And this thing been going on for many years, from the colonization to up to now. So like when Kuma Nkrumah and all those folks, they fight for us to have the freedom and to have the country itself. But now those who are the second generation, the one that was supposed to bring the next step, they are taking us beyond what we had long time ago. So how can we go from that beyond again to the next step? Because every time we try to go to next step, our leaders or will join with our enemy and bring us back. So what can we do as African, to make that step forward, not backward, as an African, not relying on the UN, I mean the African Union or our leaders.
Thank you for that question. And I believe that question is what is in everybody's mind. Um, a number of people have mentioned that in this discussion today, but I bet you that is a question that is in everybody's mind. We as Africans, we are definitely tired of all of this. We know that we have the resources. We can survive on our own. We definitely can. But why are we going through this? Is the question that everybody is talking about. So let me give the floor to Shahid. A minute. Prof, I see you eager to speak. A minute to you. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
me
Dr.
too.
Shahid.
Yeah. So it's very similar question that what Emil has raised, and only one reason I see, because everything, when you are going ahead, everything is controlled by market, and the trade structure what is being set by the West in any part of the world is unjust. It is not for everybody. Those who are richer will become more richer. Those who are poor will become more poorer. So that is the structure that you have to understand, that that the structure is not viable for those countries, especially the developing countries or underdeveloped countries, to have the social status or social access, everywhere, equal rights and everything. That is not into this trade structure that what is being set by the West. They are creating such a system that they can get benefit, whether you are dying in hunger, dying in poverty, they don't bother about it. And this gap is increasing day by day, not only in Africa. Asia is also suffering like that. Even now, after this Russia and Ukraine war, it is much more visible in European countries as well. Now you see that how the situation are turning up. So we have to understand that whatever the resources you have, you can feed on your own. You have every natural resources, everything is there, but the system that which is working, it is not controlled by you. It is controlled by the West, and that system is created. It's not justified. It's not made for you that you can benefit out of it. That is made for themselves, and it is not visible. So you have to understand, the leaders should understand that why they are following that kind of system that which is not benefiting you yourself. So that is the one cause that you have to understand, and you have to work upon that to create. And there are many ways that you can be self-sustained. There are huge agriculture resources. Why you have to borrow and import the things which you have? You have to develop your own skill. One example, you see that when you need any technology or anything, Chinese bring their own engineer and do it, and again go back. They don't train Africans to become engineer and lead on their own way, because they don't want to transfer the knowledge. Similarly, the Western countries are also doing the same. They bring their own expert. They don't create new leadership or new exports in African region. And because they want to have that kind of system that is controlled by themselves. So that is the one reason of every the drawbacks, or every the problem that what we see. This is that like system that they have created, so we have to be very alert on that.
Thank you for that answer. Thank you very much. Very, very enlightening. Let
May
me
I say
give
And
something?
I just wanna add some stuff on what the Shahid said, and also pertaining to Mrs. Samil question.
question.
So one thing that I want to first of all comment before responding to the question is, um, in this life, we are not enemies, right? But what happened is that um, everybody is fighting for their survival. So like human being first, as individual first, and then as a group of people second. So if you look at the West, you look at Europe, America, Asia, and all, every single one of these group of people, they are fighting for their survival. And so if you're not making use of your resources, they will make use of the first for you. If they have to make sure that they'll come and take it away from you, they will take it away from you. Even by force, they will take it away, because they are fighting for their own survival. They are building, sustainability. They are building their empires. They are building something that's gonna last forever. Their race, their people, their wealth, and all that stuff. So, but African people are the only ones that doesn't fight for their survival. If we are fighting for their survival, it's an individual, as you, as Priscilla, as you, as Titus, as you, as Amir, as I, as Ben. So if we are fighting as individual, not as a system, not as one people, not as African people, not as African race. So for the fact that we are disconnected, for the fact that we are not united, for the fact that we are not building systems, and like Dr. Aidi mentioned, the infrastructures, the policies and programs and things that can last, that can help to benefit the people, then we fail. And because we fail to build those things, somebody else will build it and then use it on us. And when the bills are used on us, we become now a tool. So now African people, the countries and the resources, everything has become materials and tools, and for the West and for the East. So it is very, very critical, like Doshai mentioned, the richer are keep getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. So how do we break this system? It is very important, especially as African people, for the fact that we've got a very good continent, we've got good resources, we are good people, and so on and so forth. We need to uphold our integrity. We don't even need to trust each other. It is not. We don't need to trust each other. I can tell you that just the same as Europe and America have issues. All right. Uh, all right. Sorry about
Can I
that.
say something?
Watching. Yeah. No. Somebody watching in with some and with Micron and all that. So what I'm saying here, it is very, very important for the African people to understand that uh, just the same as America doesn't have an issue with Russia, have an issue with China, and so other countries, they don't trust each other, but they are able to work with each other as ally because they have integrity. They're all fighting for the same thing. So because they know that they are powerful nations, they can be able to come into a table and agree. Say, how do we do this? So they work together in order to take advantage of a continent like Africa, because Africa doesn't have that kind of a structure to stand on its own, or have not built a kind of structure where it can be able to sustain and to provide for the people. So they will come out there and come like they are friends, or they come like angels, to come like saviors, and all these things, and be able to destabilize many countries to extract resources. The only way it is possible for you to extract things from people is to make them to become vulnerable. So when you speak to them, they listen to you, and you take it away from them, and without even knowing. So the only way that we can be able to stop these internal conflicts, wars, hunger, starvation, and unemployment, and all of these that is happening within African continent, or even the African people around the world, is first integrity. We have to have integrity as African people. We have to know that we are people of knowledge and wisdom and abilities. We have to understand that we are also very smart people, and at the same time build system that will help to sustain us as Africans, and then work together in collaboration. Whether you are from the north, south, east, west of Africa, we are all one people. We have to be able to, the AU has to have a stand in every single country that faces issues. The AU has to be the father or the mother or whatever, the institution that can be able to help to support every single citizens of African origin, whether in the continent of Africa or outside of Africa. We have to make sure that we support every single African wherever they are or whatever they're doing, and so the government as well. So without that, without that one global institution that's going to help to put every African people or make Africa to work in collaboration, it is very, very, it's going to be very difficult. So the call is for, first, every African in the continent around the world to have integrity for each other, and then secondly, the building the systems that will help to provide for the people of African descent, so especially in Sudan or whichever country that we may belong to. And then thirdly, it is very important for the government to be able to work together. Those boundaries that we put within African countries should be taken down. So it's simple. Those visa stuff, and travel to Nigeria, you have to pay for visas of this and so on. Those boundaries has to put down. We have to work as one people. We have to work for our survival, because the world today is about surviving. China is trying to survive. America is trying to survive. Europe is trying to survive. So everything that they are doing, every strategy that they're putting in place, is to build better Europe, build better America, build better China. You can see that China right now is small. So they are planting nations within nations. China is planting nations within nations, the same as America is planting nations within nations. So it is the same strategy that these people are using. So it is very important that African people fight for their own survival. That's just what I want to say. This is how it stops, knowing that we have to work in building a better Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Can I
you.
say something?
So, Prof, no,
Prof,
Dr.
okay.
Titus had a comment.
I think it's
Okay.
Prof before me, Prof before I.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right. So, and I agree with everything that everyone has said here, but we have to divide these strategies into three or four. There is what we are doing right now to intervene with Sudan, and there are other countries in Africa that are suffering the same strategy. So the same thing that is happening in Sudan, we have these other countries like Niger and Chad, and these other countries that are, or Central African Republic, that are suffering. They may not be at war, but the people on the ground are suffering. And if you look at what is happening on the ground in each country that we are in, Nigeria, Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa, there's one common denominator. The people are poor. And when people are poor, you can go to them and feed them with any garbage, they will eat it so long as you're ordering the food there. You tell them, raise your hands, and they're going to raise, because a mother who has children that are sick and hungry and dying, they're going to eat that. That's something that we must deal with. Poverty. And if you look at what the West has been, and the West is specifically very, very keen on this, they talk about democracy, human rights, and things of useless things like LGBT. I don't know what that is. How many people are LGBT in Africa? 10 compared to 1.4 billion. But this is what we are paying attention with, and we are talking about elections. In Nigeria, we are talking about elections. Instead of talking about how to build a factory in Nigeria, we're talking about who is going to be elected, and this is something that keeps us busy. Miseducation of Africans, miseducation and misinformation by the BBC, by the CNN, MSNBC, and all these other baby newspapers and newscasts in South African Broadcasting Corporation, Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. If you look at all those ones, we are dealing with what we call miseducation. Dr. Shahid talked about it. It is miseducation. We need to educate our people, for example, in Zimbabwe, to be able to create their own food, even within the middle of the crisis. Let me tell you guys, Ukraine is the size of Kenya. And when Ukraine goes down, we are saying that fertilizer and grain, that is wheat in Africa, we are having starvation. Do you get that? So Ukraine is the size of Kenya. Kenya is one of the smallest countries in East Africa. And we cannot produce grain for that, for us? No, because we have been focusing on something that is useless. When I take my kids to school, I tell them to draw a grasshopper. What does a grasshopper do to feeding that person? I tell them that an elephant has a trunk. We are going to call out this kind of education. When we go to the masses, we are telling them, oh, if we elect a good leader. No, if we have our factories built, if we have our engineers, I now talk to any African, you ask them, you are a doctor, where do you think you have a better chance of survival? It's not Africa. They think US. If you ask an engineer, where is the best for survival? It's US. It's miseducation. This, if you look at our nurses, our teachers, even me and you, where are we sitting? We are sitting in the West and being happy, and we now can be shouting and be taking our dollars there. Our people back home are poor. Our people back home are poor. We need to teach them, first and foremost, the means of survival. We have survived like this for thousands of years. It is agriculture, and then you build our industries around it. Feed the people, then you can take them to school, and you can do all this. But it is miseducation. And if you look at the 1800, miseducation. So let's educate the right way.
Okay, great points there. I think we have to come back to this particular discussion, but great point there. We're almost running out of time here. Dr. Titus, yes. Go ahead. You got a minute, please. Thank you.
Yes, what I wanted to say was that the way forward is calling out erring leaders and also countries the way, let me say, Prof mentioned, or we have said in this particular forum. If it is a country or a leader or those so-called superpowers that are erring or causing issues, we should call them out. And then by the time we call them out in forums like these, our people that are watching across the world will begin to know and also get sensitized and then take action or begin to know exactly what to do. And then also, like the chair said, we need allies. As a matter of fact, whether the US or Russia or China may have specific interests and may not be treating Sudan right or other African countries right. But however, in those countries, we still have friends, or there are people that are not happy with their governments. They are not happy with their corporations for what they are doing wrong in Africa. So such people, such organizations in those countries, we need them as allies. And then thirdly, Dr. Shahid mentioned something about the media, countering those narratives that are not right, bringing the information that is right to the fore. I think it's also very important, because by the time we do that, many people in Africa and across the world will definitely know exactly what is happening. And those that are friends will come in as friends and then support and so on and so forth. And then the last but not the least, I've forgotten, but maybe if I remember later or in another session, I will mention it. So we need to come together as Africans. We need to seek our allies. We need to call out those that are doing things that are wrong, either on the African continent or even outside. And by the time we do that, even within Africa, their own people will not even elect them. They will call them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation. It feels like we should just keep it going. There's so much to talk about, but we've already used about an hour of your an hour 30 minutes of your time already. So I would not be fair keeping you here any longer, even though I want to. I love to have you here. I just want us to join voices with the Sudanese people, with the rest of the Africans across the world, and our friends and our African friends. Let's join forces and ask these two leaders of Sudan today to please stop this fighting. The people are suffering. You might have been benefiting from our colonial masters, if I may put it that way. You might be benefiting, but that's being selfish. And I want to call that out. It's being selfish. Think about your people. Think about the economy of your country. Think about your children that are dying on the streets. You don't have hospitals no more. Think about the rest of Africa. Please, we implore you to stop this war. Stop this war and let peace reign again. Let's go back to the Sudan where everybody's smiling, they're working together, and UPAM can visit, as we did not too long ago. Let's go back to the happy times and make it better for Africa. Fellow viewers, ladies and gentlemen, it is Sudan today. It might be Ethiopia tomorrow. It might be South Africa, just like Prof said. But we know everything that is going on. We understand it. And the great question that Ms. Amir asked, what are we doing about it? Let's think as African children, and especially those young leaders for tomorrow. Let's think, let's not fall into the same traps that our current leaders have fallen into or they fell into. There are ways that we can work with other countries, but that benefit us. And like Dr. Shahid said, putting systems in place that benefit us, Africa. But most importantly, let's stand as one people. Let's speak as one people. Let's work as one people. Because if we are together and we speak as one, they will not be able to break us. We will succeed. And this is what United Pan-Africanist Movement stands for, bringing us together so that we can work as one. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for giving us your time today. Thank you so much for interacting with us. We look forward to our next series, and we hope that you continue to be as interactive. Please, if you have any questions, don't fail to reach out to us. Send the questions to our page, and we'll be able to answer. If you want to join us, we provide that information for you as well on our page. So join us. Let's join hands together as African people and our friends who are non-Africans. Let's join hands together and make it better for Africa. We can do this. Thank you very much. Let me not take much of your time, and hope to see you again next week. My panelists, I appreciate you for all this amazing discussions. Thank you, and have a great day. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
The Go
Thank you.
Fund for Africa, for Sudan. We have the Go Fund.